Jamie, I want to be able to get your insight. We're doing a lot to do testing, and sometimes people don't rely on tests. They're looking at their qualifications, like a CPA or something. I want to be able to get your insight on qualifications versus productivity. Um, and from your experience, how have you seen that play out?
Yeah, thanks, Thomas. Yeah, well, look, I sort of took advice from Ed over the years. I guess once upon a time, I was all about, probably focused too much on qualifications, about people, whether they've got the CA designation or the CPA designation. Look, you've got to have a basic level of education, I guess, for any, profession, of course, whether that's a degree or whatever it may be. But you can focus too much on qualifications 100%. And over the years, some of the best performing people that I've had in terms of productivity haven't had, the CPA qualification or, the highest qualification you could get in the profession. So it's more about being competent and having the experience. And what you'll find is if you overly focus on qualifications, then you'll miss out on the people that are quite productive. And so, so as a rule of thumb, people are either competent or incompetent. In the mix of that is qualifications, but qualifications are important. But if you just solely focus on qualifications, for example, Thomas, if you don't hire someone because they're not a CPA, then you've missed the whole boat.
We've had situations where I've seen people with masters in accounting come through and they can't do an individual tax return. Those examples you're talking about.
Yeah, classic example. If you've been part of the WISE community for a while over the years, you would have heard Ed Chan say many times that, he doesn't focus on qualifications. He focuses on people with competency, being competent. And so that's the key here. Time and time again, Ed Chan would say he'd always focus on productivity. That's what you've got to focus on results at the end of the day is productivity. And, even some of the most educated people I've worked with, the brightest minds I've seen over the last, 30 years that I've worked with, some of those people, unfortunately, are just not productive. The other thing is, Thomas, you can focus on being a master craftsman versus a tradesman. Master craftsman is fastidious, highly technical, can be highly slow. So we can't have that in public practice accountancy in our industry. You can't be a master craftsman and be, totally technical that you just can't get the jobs out the door. Everyone knows how busy that we are, or we've got deadlines to meet. It's all about productivity, Thomas, and always focus on productivity over qualifications. Yeah.
And I hear you loud and clear. We can't just rely on academic transcripts and the qualifications section of their resume then to determine whether this person's going to be right. So in your experience, how have you felt that tests have been an indicator of a person's productivity during the hiring process? Like, where have you seen that play a role? Is it always accurate, these tests, in being able to determine whether that person is going to be productive?
No, when you're hiring people and human beings, it's not an exact science. Again, another thing that Ed taught me, when you're going to hire, whether you hire yourself or you use someone, you can't just sort of have a ironclad 100% guarantee. That's just not the way the world is. However, what you do need is process. So it's sort of the 80-20 rule, Thomas. You do need a process so that you can, minimize your risk and maximize your success. And if you do have certain testing, whether that's task or test or whatever, it's better than having nothing. So again, I would say 80% of the time, would get it right if you're following that method, even the WISE talent method, or giving people some tests, some accuracy or productivity or task test is better than nothing at all. Because if you've got nothing at all, then you're really sort of flying blind. But on the flip side, you can't guarantee every single hire that you do. Over the years of building Sky Accountants, sometimes we've had to hire multiple times, to get to the destination. And a lot of time people will hire and they'll say, oh, it didn't work out, and they'll feel like giving up. That's where you've got to hire again, and sometimes up to 3 or 4 times until you get it right. So it's not an exact science, but you're better off having some method, some plan than nothing at all, particularly with trying to determine someone's productivity.
Yeah, that's a tangent to this, and it just came up to me. A really interesting situation I see every now and then is a firm is hiring for, say, a senior position, right? And they give them a test, like say some sort of practical test appropriate for a senior. And that person scores poorly on that test, but the firm just likes that person so much. They're like, well, I think I can improve this person. I think I can get them better. What's the right approach in that situation? Because thinking of that situation, it feels like a hand of poker, and they're really in love with a bad hand and they want it to work, but the signals are telling them it isn't going to work. But really, there might be a small chance it does. What do we do in that situation? Do we follow our gut, or do we stick to what we're seeing?
Stick to the system, Thomas. Always stick to the system, because when you're interviewing someone or someone's going for the job, you might really, really like them. Like, you might, personality wise, you might think, oh geez, such and such is fantastic. But if you just focus on the personality, you're bound to hire the wrong person. Or if you look at the flip side, where I've seen a bookkeeper or an accountant in an interview and they interview really badly, mightn't look at you so much as you'd like, or they may not say the right things, they may not be as bubbly as you would like. And then you go away from the interview going, oh, I really didn't like that person. That's sort of like hiring from your gut. Don't hire from your gut. Put the person through the test. What happens if, you don't really get along with them that well, like personality wise on the surface, but say that they're fantastic with their results and with their productivity? That's what you need to focus on. So just because in the interview they mightn't perform so well in the interview because they're nervous or you don't like their personality, definitely doesn't mean that you don't hire them, because you've got to just focus on the method. You've got to focus on the questions, and you've got to follow a process. That's the key with hiring. But if you go off on a tangent and don't follow a tested sort of method, then you're not going to hire successfully on average.
So many good tips in there, Jamie, and all coming from experience as well. Only a wise talent process that's been able to reflect on decades of experience and hone it into a few steps like this. I don't know, when I think of hiring, sometimes I think of a hand of poker. You have to follow through a method. You have to see what hand you've got. Where does it relate to what the other players are doing? How does it relate to, like, you have to follow some sort of thought process. It can't just be random constantly.
Yeah.
Oh, my gut's feeling this at one time, or a cat just crossed the street, so maybe we should bet this hand or something. So, if we follow a consistent process, then we'd be able to ease up and be able to build up our team with a lot less effort.
That's right. If you're going to grow your firm, and everyone here is or wants to, you're going to be hiring for the rest of your career. So my message is, you better invest in whatever method it is to hire people so that you can grow your firm. And